plan to make you disappear. So she really wanted to eliminate me?
The metallic click of handcuffs around my wrists should have been my first warning that this wasn't going to be the kinky surprise I thought it was. But hey, after 12 years of marriage to Nicole, I'd learned to appreciate any attempt at spontaneity, even if it came at 2 in the morning. Well, this is new, I said, testing the restraints with a grin. Should I be worried about what you've got planned or just excited? Nicole stood at the foot of our king-sized bed, her blonde hair perfectly styled, even at this ungodly hour. She was wearing that black silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary. The one she'd worn exactly once before tonight. Her green eyes held something I couldn't quite read. Anticipation? No, something colder. "Oh, Adam," she said, her voice carrying a strange mix of pity and satisfaction. "You should definitely be worried." That's when I heard the footsteps on our hardwood stairs. 2 men in black ski masks entered our bedroom like they owned the place. The first was tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the casual confidence of someone who'd done this before. The second was smaller, nervous, fidgeting with something in his hands, a camera. "What the hell is this?" I yanked against the handcuffs, the metal biting into my wrists. The restraints were real, professional grade, not the novelty crap from some adult store. "This," Nicole said, settling into the antique chair by our window, "is your wake-up call, sweetheart." The larger man stepped forward, and I caught a glimpse of his eyes through the mask. Cold, calculating. Adam Mallory, right? The hotshot robotics engineer who thinks he's so damn smart? Who wants to know? I kept my voice steady, but my mind was racing. These weren't random burglars. They knew my name, my profession. This was planned. "Someone who's tired of watching you treat your wife like garbage," the man continued. "Nicole here has been telling us all about your little anger issues, your controlling behavior, how you monitor her every move with all your fancy gadgets." I stared at my wife. "Nicole, what is this? What did you tell them?" She crossed her legs, that silk nightgown riding up her thighs. "Just the truth, Adam, about how you've been emotionally abusing me for years, how you use your technical skills to spy on me, to control my finances, to isolate me from my friends. That's complete BS, and you know it." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was beyond caring about tone. "I've never laid a hand on you. I've never—" "See?" Nicole gestured toward me, like I was Exhibit A. "There's that temper. That's exactly what I'm talking about." The smaller man raised the camera, and I realized what this was really about. They weren't here to rob us or hurt me physically. This was character assassination, filmed and ready for distribution. "You're going to confess," the larger man said, pulling out a piece of paper. "You're going to admit to abusing your wife, to controlling her, to threatening her. And you're going to agree to give her everything she wants in the divorce." "Like hell I am." Nicole leaned forward, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she used when explaining simple concepts to her accounting clients. "Adam, honey, you don't really have a choice here. These men have been very patient, but they won't stay that way forever. Just read the statement, sign the papers, and this all goes away quietly." I looked around our bedroom, the room I'd spent 3 months renovating when we bought this house 8 years ago. I'd installed smart lighting, automated window treatments, even a hidden security system that Nicole didn't know about. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was accusing me of surveillance while sitting 10 feet from a camera I'd installed to protect us from exactly this kind of situation. "You know what's funny?" I said, forcing a laugh. "You think you've got this all figured out, but you forgot one tiny detail." "What's that?" Nicole's confidence wavered just slightly. "I'm a robotics engineer, sweetheart. I don't just work with gadgets, I design systems, including the security system in this house." I pressed my thumb against what looked like a decorative metal stud on our headboard. It was actually a biometric scanner, part of the emergency system I'd installed after our neighborhood had a string of break-ins 2 years ago. The response was immediate. Silent alarms triggered throughout the house. Emergency lights began flashing in sequence, and most importantly, a direct line to the police station activated with a pre-recorded message. "Home invasion in progress at 247 Maple Street. Multiple intruders. Homeowner restrained. Immediate assistance required." "What did you just do?" The larger man grabbed my shirt, yanking me up as far as the handcuffs would allow. "I pushed the panic button, genius. Police are already on their way. Nicole shot to her feet. Adam, you idiot! You're going to ruin everything. Ruin what, exactly? Your little blackmail scheme? The smaller man was already backing toward the door. This is bad. This is really bad. We need to go now. But the larger man wasn't ready to give up. Where are the keys to these cuffs? Nicole has them, I said, enjoying the panic creeping into his voice. But I wouldn't worry about that right now. You've got maybe 3 minutes before this place is crawling with cops. That's when we heard the sirens. Nicole's face went white. You weren't supposed to. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Yeah, well, life's full of disappointments. I watched as both men headed for the window. By the way, there are cameras recording everything. Has been since you walked in. So smile, a-holes. The smaller man made it out the window first, dropping onto the roof of our back porch. The larger man tried to follow, but in his haste, he caught his leg on the window frame and went down hard. I heard him cry out in pain, then the sound of him crashing through the porch roof. Nicole was frantically searching through her jewelry box. Where did I put them? Where were the damn keys? Try the nightstand, I suggested helpfully, right next to the divorce papers you've been hiding. She spun around, her mask finally slipping completely. How did you know about those? Come on, Nicole. You've been planning this for months. The secret meetings with your lawyer, the second cell phone, the way you've been documenting every argument we've had. You think I'm stupid? The sirens were getting closer. Nicole found the keys and fumbled with the handcuffs, her hands shaking. This doesn't change anything, she hissed. I'll tell them you set this up, that you hired those men to make me look bad. Good luck with that theory. I rubbed my wrists as the cuffs came off, especially when they see the footage of you letting them into the house. Yeah, the front door camera caught that too. The police were pounding on our front door now. Police, open up! Nicole ran to the window, probably hoping to see if her accomplices had escaped. The larger man was lying motionless on the ground below, groaning. The smaller one was nowhere to be seen. Nicole Mallory! I called down to the officers entering our backyard. She's up here. She's the one who let them in. My wife turned back to me, and for the first time in years, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Adam, please, we can work this out, and we can... The time for working things out was before you decided to frame me for domestic misuse. I walked to our bedroom door. Officers, up here. As the police thundered up our stairs, Nicole made one last desperate play. She threw herself onto the bed, messing up her hair and tearing her nightgown slightly. Help me! She screamed as the first officer appeared in our doorway. He's been holding me prisoner. Those men were trying to rescue me. Detective Linda Chavez entered behind the uniformed officers. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. I'd met her at a few neighborhood watch meetings, and she had a reputation for not tolerating BS. Mr. Mallory, she said, taking in the scene. Want to tell me what happened here? My wife and 2 accomplices tried to coerce me into signing a false confession of domestic misuse. The whole thing was being filmed. I activated my security system, and here we are. That's not true, Nicole sobbed dramatically. He's been abusing me for years. Those men were trying to help me escape. Detective Chavez looked from Nicole to me, then around the room. Her gaze settled on the camera equipment the smaller man had dropped in his haste to escape. Interesting rescue attempt, she said dryly. Usually, people trying to help misuse sufferers don't bring professional filming equipment. I can explain that, Nicole started, but Chavez held up a hand. Mr. Mallory, you mentioned security footage? Complete recording of everything that happened tonight, multiple angles. I gestured toward the hidden cameras. Audio and video, all time-stamped. Nicole's face crumpled as she realized her story was falling apart in real time. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my kitchen giving my statement to Detective Chavez while Nicole was being questioned by another officer in our living room. Through the window, I could see paramedics loading the injured intruder into an ambulance. So let me get this straight, Chavez said, reviewing her notes. Your wife has been planning to divorce you for months, but instead of just filing papers, she decided to manufacture evidence of misuse? That's about the size of it, though I suspect there's more to this story than just a messy divorce. What makes you say that? I pulled Nicole's second cell phone from the kitchen drawer where I'd found it earlier that week. This isn't her regular phone. It's got encrypted messaging apps, calls to numbers I don't recognize, and a whole lot of communication with someone named Colin. Chavez raised an eyebrow. Colin Price, by any chance? You know him? Regional director at Hartwell and Associates. That's where your wife works, right? Right, you think he's involved in this? Before Chavez could answer, one of the officers called her over. Nicole was being read her rights, charged with conspiracy and filing a false police report. The injured man had been identified as Mickey Torres, a local lowlife with a record of intimidation and extortion. As they led Nicole out in handcuffs, real ones this time, she looked back at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Adam," she called out. "You have no idea what you've started." Detective Chavez watched the patrol car pull away, then turned back to me. "Mr. Mallory, I'd suggest you be very careful over the next few days. People like your wife don't usually work alone, and they don't give up easily." I nodded, already planning my next moves. Nicole was right about one thing. This was just the beginning. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how far I was willing to go to protect myself. As I watched the police cars disappear down Maple Street, I allowed myself a small smile. Nicole wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I didn't just build robots for a living. I built systems. Complex, interconnected systems designed to solve problems. And my cheating, scheming wife had just become a very big problem that needed solving. The next morning brought two things: a massive headache and the realization that Nicole's little stunt was just the opening move in a much larger game. I found that out when I tried to access our joint bank account to pay for a locksmith, because obviously I wasn't taking any chances on who else might have keys to my house. "I'm sorry, Mr. Mallory," the bank teller said, her voice carrying that particular brand of professional sympathy reserved for people whose lives are obviously falling apart. "This account has been frozen pending a domestic dispute investigation." Frozen by who? "Mrs. Mallory filed an emergency petition yesterday afternoon claiming she needed protection from financial misuse." I stared at the computer screen she'd turned toward me, showing a balance of $47,000 that I couldn't touch. "She filed this before the incident at my house?" "According to the timestamp, yes, sir. About 3 hours before." Beautiful. Nicole had been covering her bases, making sure that even if her blackmail scheme failed, she'd have me tied up in legal red tape. I thanked the teller and walked out to my car, my mind racing through the implications. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor, Mrs. Fenn. "Adam, dear, there are reporters in front of your house. Thought you should know." Perfect. I drove around the block and parked behind the elementary school, then called my old colleague Sam Rodriguez from my previous job at Boston Dynamics. If anyone could help me figure out the technical side of this mess, it was Sam. "Jesus, Adam," Sam said when I explained the situation. "Your wife really went nuclear, didn't she? That's just what I know about so far. I need your help with something, and it needs to stay between us. Name it. I need to know what's on Nicole's work computer. Legally, ethically, whatever. Can you help me get access?" There was a pause. "That's a pretty big ask, man. If we get caught..." "Sam, they tried to force me to confess to domestic misuse on camera. They froze my bank accounts. My wife is telling everyone who'll listen that I'm some kind of monster. I need to know what I'm really dealing with here." Another pause. Then a sigh. "All right. But we do this smart, and we do it clean. No hacking, no illegal entry. We find a legitimate way in, or we don't do it at all." Agreed. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far enough from both our neighborhoods to avoid the curious eyes of people who might know us. Sam had brought his laptop and a small device that looked like a USB drive. "This is a forensic imaging tool," he explained, keeping his voice low. "It's designed for IT security audits. If we can get physical access to her computer for about 10 minutes, we can create a complete copy of her hard drive. And how exactly do we get that access? Leave that to me. I've got a contact at Hartwell and Associates. They use our security consulting services. I can arrange a routine audit of their systems." "Won't Nicole be suspicious if you show up at her office?" Sam grinned. "Nicole won't be there. According to the local news, she's been suspended pending an internal investigation. Apparently, word of last night's excitement reached her boss." That was news to me, but it made sense. Hartwell and Associates was a conservative firm that handled financial services for half the businesses in town. They couldn't afford to have employees involved in criminal activities, even as alleged sufferers. 2 hours later, Sam called me back. "We're in business. I'm scheduled for a security audit at 3 o'clock today. Nicole's computer will be part of the routine scan." "What do I need to do?" Nothing. Stay away from the office. Keep your hands clean. If anyone asks, you don't know anything about this. I spent the rest of the day at the public library, using their computers to research everything I could find about Colin Price. What I discovered was interesting. He'd been married twice before, both marriages ending in messy divorces where his ex-wives accused him of financial manipulation and emotional misuse. There were also some questionable business dealings, a few clients who'd filed complaints about unauthorized transactions, though nothing that had resulted in formal charges. Sam called me at 6 o'clock. "We need to meet, same place as before." He looked grim when he walked into the coffee shop, carrying his laptop in a nondescript bag. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Bad, really bad." He opened the laptop and pulled up a series of files. "Your wife and Colin Price have been planning this for at least 6 months. And it's not just about divorcing you. They've been systematically stealing from both your personal accounts and some of Hartwell's client accounts." He showed me a spreadsheet detailing transfers from our joint savings account to a series of shell companies, all authorized with forged signatures. The amounts were small enough to avoid triggering automatic fraud alerts, but they added up to nearly $30,000 over the past 4 months. "There's more," Sam continued. "They've been using client information from Hartwell to set up fake investment accounts. Colin would identify wealthy clients, Nicole would create false documentation, and they'd skim money from legitimate transactions." "How much are we talking about?" "Close to $500,000 spread across maybe 20 different sufferers." I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of anger and amazement. Nicole was never this smart when we were married. This level of sophistication, that's all Colin. Your wife was just the inside person with access to the financial systems. But here's the thing that really pisses me off. They were planning to pin everything on you. Sam opened another file, this one containing drafts of police reports and legal documents. According to their plan, Nicole would claim that I had been forcing her to help me steal from her clients, using my technical skills to hack into Hartwell's systems. The domestic misuse angle was supposed to provide her motive for finally coming forward. They were going to make me the fall guy for their entire operation. Gets worse. Look at this. Sam pulled up a series of encrypted messages between Nicole and Colin. They weren't planning to just take your money and disappear. They wanted to completely destroy your reputation, make sure you'd never be able to work in tech again. I read through the messages, my anger building with each exchange. Nicole and Colin had discussed planting evidence of illegal activities on my work computer, spreading rumors about my mental stability, even suggesting that I might be dangerous to my coworkers. "There's one more thing," Sam said quietly. "Mickey Torres, the guy who got hurt at your house, he's done work for Colin before. There are payment records going back 2 years. What kind of work? Intimidation, mostly. Threatening people who were asking too many questions about Colin's business dealings. Your wife's boyfriend has been running this scam for a while, and he's not afraid to use violence to protect it." I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, processing everything Sam had shown me. Nicole wasn't just cheating on me. She was part of a criminal enterprise that had been stealing from innocent people for months. And when their scheme started to unravel, they decided to sacrifice me to save themselves. "What are you going to do?" Sam asked. "I'm going to stop them," I said. "All of them. Adam, these people are dangerous. Maybe you should just take this information to the police and let them handle it." I thought about Detective Chavez, about the legal system that had already frozen my bank accounts based on Nicole's lies. The system failed me once already. Besides, by the time the cops sort through all this evidence, Colin and Nicole will have disappeared with everyone's money. "So what's your plan?" I smiled, and Sam actually looked a little nervous. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve," I said. "But first, I need to have a conversation with Colin Price." That evening, I drove to the Brass Lantern, a dive bar on the wrong side of town where Colin liked to meet his shadier associates. Mrs. Fenn had mentioned seeing him there during one of her neighborhood gossip sessions. Apparently, her nephew worked as a bartender and recognized Colin from Nicole's Facebook photos. The Brass Lantern was exactly what you'd expect from a bar that catered to people who preferred to conduct their business away from prying eyes, dim lighting, sticky floors, and the kind of clientele that minded their own business as long as you minded yours. Colin was sitting in a corner booth, nursing a whiskey and checking his phone every few seconds. He looked nervous, which made sense considering his girlfriend was in jail and his criminal enterprise was falling apart. I walked over and slid into the booth across from him. "Hello, Colin." He looked up, startled, then quickly recovered his composure. "Adam, I heard about what happened to Nicole. Terrible business." "Cut the crap. I know about the money, the fake accounts, all of it." His face went pale, but he tried to maintain his innocent act. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the screenshots Sam had taken of their financial records. $500,000, Colin. That's what you and my wife stole from your clients." Colin's hand was shaking as he reached for his drink. "You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I've got copies of everything. The forged documents, the shell company registrations, even your encrypted messages with Nicole. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What do you want? I want you to confess. I want you to return every penny you stole. And I want you to admit that Nicole was working for you, not the other way around." Colin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're insane if you think I'm going to do that. Then I guess we do this the hard way." I stood up and walked toward the exit, but Colin called after me. "Adam, wait." I turned back. "You don't understand the position you're putting me in," he said. "There are other people involved in this. People who won't appreciate having their business exposed." "That sounds like a threat." "It's a warning. Drop this, take whatever money Nicole left you, and disappear. Otherwise, you might end up like the last person who tried to cause problems for my associates." "And who was that?" Colin's smile was cold. "A client who started asking too many questions about his investment returns. Had a very unfortunate accident last month. Fell down some stairs, broke his neck." I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about financial fraud anymore. These people were capable of homicide. "Thanks for the warning," I said. "I'll keep that in mind." I walked out of the brass lantern, my mind racing. Colin's threat had backfired spectacularly. Instead of scaring me off, it had given me crucial information. If they'd eliminated someone to protect their operation, then Nicole and Colin weren't just thieves. They were accessories to homicide. And that changed everything. As I drove home, I called Detective Chavez. "Detective, it's Adam Mallory. I need to meet with you tomorrow morning. I have information about a possible homicide." "What kind of information?" "The kind that's going to blow this whole case wide open." Detective Chavez met me at the police station the next morning, looking skeptical but interested. I'd spent most of the night organizing the evidence Sam had gathered, cross-referencing it with public records and news reports. "Tell me about this homicide," she said, settling into her chair with a cup of coffee that looked strong enough to wake the dead. 3 weeks ago, a man named Robert Chen fell down the stairs at his apartment building, broke his neck, died instantly. The passing was ruled accidental. "I remember the case. What does that have to do with your wife and Colin Price?" I spread out the financial documents on her desk. Robert Chen was one of their sufferers. He'd been asking questions about discrepancies in his investment account, money that Colin and Nicole had been skimming for months. Chavez studied the papers, her expression growing more serious. "How did you get these records?" "A security consultant was hired to audit Hartwell and Associates' computer systems. These files were discovered during that audit." It wasn't technically a lie, just not the whole truth. Chavez seemed to accept the explanation. "Even if Chen was asking questions, that doesn't prove he was homicided," she said. "No, but it establishes motive. And Colin Price essentially admitted to me last night that Chen's passing wasn't an accident." I played the recording I'd made on my phone during our conversation at the Brass Lantern. Colin's voice was clear enough to understand, especially the part where he talked about Chen's unfortunate accident. Chavez listened to the entire recording, then played it again. "This is interesting, but it's not a confession. A good lawyer could argue that Price was just trying to scare you." "Maybe, but it's enough to reopen the investigation into Chen's passing, isn't it?" She nodded slowly. "I'll talk to the detective who handled that case. In the meantime, what's your plan? Because I get the feeling you're not just going to sit back and let us handle this." "I want to expose everything. The theft, the fraud, Nicole's involvement, all of it. These people have been destroying lives for months, and they were planning to destroy mine to cover their tracks. Adam, I understand you're angry, but you need to be careful. If Colin Price is willing to eliminate to protect his operation, he won't hesitate to come after you. He's welcome to try. But I'm not Robert Chen. I know what I'm dealing with, and I'm prepared." Chavez gave me a long look. What does that mean exactly? It means I'm going to give Colin and Nicole a taste of their own medicine. They wanted to destroy my reputation? Fine. Let's see how they like having their dirty laundry aired in public. I left the police station with a promise to keep Chavez informed of my activities, though I didn't mention all the activities I had planned. Some things were better handled outside the official channels. My first stop was the offices of the local newspaper, the Valley Herald. The editor, Janet Morrison, was a woman in her 50s who'd built a reputation for investigative journalism that made the bigger papers in Boston jealous. "Mr. Mallory," she said, inviting me into her cluttered office, "I've been following your story. Quite a dramatic situation." "It's about to get more dramatic. I have evidence of a financial fraud scheme that's been operating out of Hartwell and Associates for months, potentially connected to a suspicious end." I spent an hour walking Janet through the evidence, explaining the connections between Nicole, Colin, and their sufferers. She took notes, asked pointed questions, and occasionally whistled in amazement at the scope of the operation. "This is a hell of a story," she said finally, "but I'll need to verify everything independently before we can publish." "I understand. How long will that take?" "Give me 3 days. I've got contacts at Hartwell and the police department who can confirm the details." 3 days might be too long. Colin knows I'm onto him, and he's already talking about disappearing. Janet leaned back in her chair. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we force his hand. Make him think he's about to be exposed, see what he does." "That sounds dangerous." "It is, but it's the only way to get him to make a mistake." That afternoon, I drove to Colin's apartment complex, an upscale development on the north side of town. His BMW was parked in its assigned spot, which meant he was home. Perfect. I'd brought along a few tools from my workshop, nothing illegal, just some items that would help me send a message. I started with his car, using a precision screwdriver to remove the valve stems from all 4 tires. Not permanent damage, but annoying and expensive to fix. Next, I attached a small device to his car's computer system, a diagnostic tool that would cause random electrical glitches. His radio would cut out, his air conditioning would turn on and off randomly, his dashboard lights would flicker. Nothing dangerous, but definitely maddening. Finally, I left a note under his windshield wiper. "I know what you did to Robert Chen. You have 48 hours to confess, or everyone else will know too." As I was walking back to my car, I saw Colin looking down from his 3rd-floor window. Even from that distance, I could see the panic on his face. My phone rang before I'd even left the parking lot. "You son of a witch!" Colin's voice was shaking with rage. "What did you do to my car?" "Just a little preview of what happens when you threaten people, Colin. How does it feel to be on the receiving end?" "This is maltreatment. I'm calling the police." "Go ahead. While you're at it, maybe you should tell them about Robert Chen." The line went quiet for a moment. "You don't know what you're messing with," Colin said finally. "Actually, I think I do. You're a small-time crook who got in over his head. You started stealing from clients, got greedy, and when someone got too close to the truth, you had them eliminated." "I never eliminated anyone." "Maybe not personally, but you know who did, don't you?" Another long silence. 48 hours, Colin. After that, this gets a lot worse for you." I hung up and drove home, satisfied that I'd rattled him sufficiently. Now I just had to wait and see what he'd do next. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, as I was reviewing more of the financial documents Sam had recovered, I heard a car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I saw a black sedan with tinted windows. Definitely not a neighbor's car. 2 men got out, both wearing dark suits that screamed professional muscle. They walked up to my front door with the casual confidence of people who were used to intimidating others. The doorbell rang. I activated my security system, making sure all the cameras were recording, then opened the door. "Adam Mallory?" The taller of the 2 men was probably in his 40s, with graying hair and the kind of build that suggested he spent a lot of time in the gym. "That's me. We need to talk." "About what?" "About your recent conversation with Colin Price, and about some property that belongs to our employer. I'm afraid you'll have to be more specific." The shorter man stepped forward. He was younger, maybe early 30s, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he was looking forward to violence. "Computer files," he said. "Financial records, documents that don't belong to you." You mean the evidence of Colin's embezzlement scheme?" "Sorry, but that's already been turned over to the authorities." The taller man's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand move slightly toward his jacket. Mr. Mallory, our employer is willing to be reasonable. Return the files, stop maltreating Mr. Price, and everyone walks away from this situation intact. And if I refuse? Then we'll have to explore other options. I smiled. You know what's funny? Colin said almost exactly the same thing yesterday, right before he confessed to homiciding Robert Chen. Both men went very still. That conversation was recorded, I continued, along with this one. If anything happens to me, copies of those recordings go directly to the FBI, the state police, and every news outlet in New England. The shorter man looked like he wanted to say something, but his partner held up a hand. You're making a mistake, the taller man said. Our employer has a long reach and a longer memory. Tell your employer that I'm not Robert Chen, I don't scare easily, and I don't back down from bullies. They exchanged a look, then turned and walked back to their car without another word. As soon as they were gone, I called Detective Chavez. We need to talk, I said, tonight, and you might want to bring backup. An hour later, Chavez arrived with 2 uniformed officers and a very serious expression. Tell me about these visitors, she said. I showed her the security footage of the 2 men, along with their license plate number and a clear recording of our conversation. Professional intimidators, she said, studying their faces. Probably from out of state. This is escalating faster than I expected. Colin's scared. He's calling in favors, trying to shut me down before this gets any worse for him. It's going to get worse for you too if you keep pushing. These people aren't playing games. Neither am I, Chavez sighed. What's your next move? I'm going to give Colin exactly what he's afraid of. Complete exposure. Tomorrow morning, I'm holding a press conference. I'm going to lay out everything we know about his operation, name names, and let the public decide what to do with the information. That's incredibly risky. It's also the only way to protect myself. Once this information is public, there's no point in eliminating me to keep me quiet. Unless they do it for revenge. I hadn't considered that angle, but it was too late to back down now. Colin and his associates had made their choice when they decided to threaten me. Now they'd have to live with the consequences. Detective, I need a favor. I want you to arrest Nicole tomorrow morning, right before the press conference. On what charges? She's already out on bail. Conspiracy to commit homicide. If Colin eliminated Robert Chen to protect their embezzlement scheme, then Nicole was part of the conspiracy. She had access to Chen's financial records. She would have known he was asking questions. Chavez considered this. It's a stretch, but it might work. What's your real reason for wanting her arrested? I want her to know that her boyfriend threw her under the bus. When Colin realizes he's about to be exposed, he's going to try to pin everything on Nicole. I want her to hear about it from a jail cell so she has time to think about whether she wants to protect him or save herself. You're playing a dangerous game, Adam. I'm playing the only game I've got left. The next morning, I woke up to find my front yard full of reporters. Word of the press conference had spread quickly, probably thanks to Janet Morrison's contacts in the media. I counted news vans from 3 different television stations, plus reporters from several newspapers. My phone had been ringing nonstop since 6 a.m., but I wasn't taking any calls until after the press conference. I wanted to control the narrative, make sure the story came out the way I intended. At 10 o'clock, I walked out onto my front porch and faced the crowd of reporters and cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, 3 days ago, my wife and 2 accomplices attempted to coerce me into confessing to domestic misuse that never occurred. What I discovered in the aftermath of that incident is a story of fraud, theft, and possibly homicide that reaches much deeper than a simple marital dispute. I spent the next 30 minutes laying out everything I knew about Colin and Nicole's operation, showing copies of the financial documents, playing recordings of my conversations with Colin, and connecting it all to Robert Chen's suspicious passing. The reporters asked pointed questions, took notes, and recorded everything. By the time I finished, I could see the excitement in their eyes. This was the kind of story that could make careers. As the crowd began to disperse, Detective Chavez approached me. It's done, she said quietly. Nicole was arrested an hour ago. She's being held without bail pending a homicide investigation. How did she take it? About as well as you'd expect. She's demanding to speak with Colin, but he seems to have disappeared. I wasn't surprised. Colin was probably halfway to Mexico by now, assuming he had any sense at all. What happens next? Now we wait and see who decides to talk first. My guess is that Nicole will crack within 24 hours once she realizes Colin isn't coming to rescue her. As it turned out, Detective Chavez was optimistic. Nicole cracked in 6 hours. The call came at 4 in the afternoon. Detective Chavez sounded tired but satisfied. Nicole wants to make a deal, she said. She's ready to tell us everything about Colin's operation, including what really happened to Robert Chen. What does she want in return? Immunity from the homicide charges, reduced sentences on the fraud counts. Standard stuff for someone turning state's evidence. I felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with anger. After everything Nicole had put me through, the betrayal, the lies, the attempt to frame me for misuse, she was finally going to face the consequences of her choices. Are you going to give her the deal? Probably. Her testimony is the only way we're going to get Colin, especially now that he's disappeared. But I thought you might want to know what she's saying about you. Let me guess, I'm still the villain in her version of events. Actually, no. She's admitted that the domestic misuse allegations were completely fabricated. She's claiming that Colin manipulated her into the scheme, that she was afraid of him and didn't know how to get out. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course she is. Nicole's always been good at playing the sufferer when it suits her purposes. The important thing is that her statement corroborates everything you've told us about the financial fraud. We've got enough evidence now to issue federal warrants for Colin and his associates. What about the men who threatened me? Still working on that. The license plate was registered to a shell company, but we're tracing the connections. We'll find them. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, trying to process everything that had happened over the past week. 7 days ago, I'd been a happily married man with a stable job and a comfortable life. Now I was divorced, unemployed. Hartwell and Associates had terminated my consulting contract to avoid any appearance of impropriety, and the target of professional criminals. But I was also free. Free from Nicole's lies, free from a marriage that had been built on deception, free to rebuild my life on my own terms. My phone rang, interrupting my brooding. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Adam Mallory. Mr. Mallory, this is Sarah Chen. Robert Chen was my husband. I sat up straighter. Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry for your loss. I saw your press conference today. The things you said about my husband's passing. Do you really believe he was homicided? I think it's possible, yes. The timing is very suspicious. And Colin Price essentially admitted to me that your husband's end wasn't accidental. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mrs. Chen, are you still there? I'm here. Mr. Mallory, there's something I need to tell you. Something I never told the police, because I wasn't sure it was important. What is it? The night before Robert died, he called me at work. He was excited about something, said he'd figured out where his missing money had gone. He was planning to confront someone the next day. Did he say who? Man named Colin. Robert said he had proof that this Colin person had been stealing from him and he was going to demand his money back. My blood ran cold. Mrs. Chen, did you tell the police about this phone call? No. When they said Robert's passing was an accident, I didn't think it mattered. But after hearing what you said today, you need to call Detective Linda Chavez immediately. This information could be crucial to the homicide investigation. Will you help me? I don't know how to deal with the police, and I'm afraid they won't believe me. Of course I'll help. Can you meet me at the police station tomorrow morning? Yes. And Mr. Mallory, thank you for caring about what happened to my husband, for not letting them get away with it. After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, thinking about Robert Chen. He'd been a retired accountant, a man who'd worked hard his entire life to build a nest egg for his golden years. Colin and Nicole had stolen that from him. And when he'd gotten too close to the truth, they'd eliminated him for it. The next morning, I met Sarah Chen at the police station. She was a small, elderly woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes that held a deep sadness. She clutched a manila folder containing her husband's financial records and notes about the discrepancies he'd discovered. Detective Chavez listened carefully as Mrs. Chen recounted her husband's final phone call, taking detailed notes and asking follow-up questions. This is very helpful, Chavez said when Mrs. Chen finished. Combined with Nicole's testimony, we now have a clear timeline of events leading up to your husband's passing. What did Nicole tell you? I asked. That Colin was panicking about Robert Chen's investigation. According to Nicole, Colin said he was going to handle the situation personally. The next day, Chen was dead. Mrs. Chen gasped. So it's true? Robert was homicided? We're treating it as a homicide investigation now, yes. The medical examiner is taking another look at your husband's body, and we're interviewing everyone who was in his apartment building that night." As we left the police station, Mrs. Chen turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I know this won't bring Robert back," she said, "but at least now people will know the truth about what happened to him." "That's all any of us can ask for," I replied. But privately, I knew that the truth wasn't enough. Colin Price was still out there somewhere, probably living comfortably on the money he'd stolen from his sufferers. Nicole would get a reduced sentence in exchange for her cooperation, and the men who'd threatened me would disappear back into whatever shadows they'd emerged from. The system would grind on, justice would be served in its slow, imperfect way, and everyone would move on with their lives. Everyone except the people who'd been hurt by Colin and Nicole's greed. That wasn't good enough for me. That afternoon, I got a call from Sam Rodriguez. "Adam, I've been monitoring some of the online accounts we identified during our investigation. Colin's been accessing them remotely, probably trying to transfer money before the authorities freeze everything. Can you trace where he's accessing them from?" "I'm working on it. The connections are being routed through several proxy servers, but I might be able to narrow down his general location." "How long will that take?" "Give me 24 hours, but Adam, what are you planning to do with this information?" "I'm going to finish what Colin started." "That sounds ominous. Colin wanted to destroy my life to protect his criminal enterprise. He eliminated Robert Chen for the same reason. Now he's going to learn what it feels like to have his life destroyed." "Adam, the guy's already on the run. His career is over. His bank accounts are frozen. He's facing homicide charges. How much more destroyed can his life get?" "We'll find out." Sam was quiet for a moment. "You're scaring me a little bit here, man. What exactly are you planning?" "Nothing illegal, nothing violent. I'm just going to make sure that Colin Price gets exactly what he deserves." The next evening, Sam called with Colin's location. "He's in a small town called Millbrook, about 2 hours north of here. Looks like he's holed up in a cheap motel, probably trying to figure out his next move." "Perfect. Can you send me the address?" "Adam, I really think you should let the police handle this. The police are going to arrest him, put him on trial, and eventually send him to prison for maybe 10 years. He'll serve 6 with good behavior, then get out and start the whole cycle over again with new sufferers." "So what's your alternative?" "I'm going to make sure he never hurts anyone again." I drove to Millbrook that night, arriving at the Sleepy Inn Motel around midnight. It was exactly the kind of place where someone like Colin would hide. Cheap, anonymous, and the type of establishment that didn't ask too many questions about its guests. Colin's BMW was parked outside room 237, looking sadly out of place among the rusted pickup trucks and beat-up sedans that belonged to the motel's usual clientele. I could see light coming from under his door, which meant he was awake. I parked across the street and waited, watching the motel for signs of activity. Around 2 a.m., Colin emerged from his room, looking haggard and paranoid. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. He walked to the ice machine, constantly looking over his shoulder like he expected someone to jump out at him. Good. He was scared. That would make what I had planned much easier. I waited until he went back to his room, then I made my move. The motel's office was unmanned at this hour, but the night clerk was asleep in a chair behind the counter. I slipped past him and accessed the guest registry, finding Colin's room number and the fake name he'd used to register. Then I went back to my car and made a series of phone calls. The first was to the FBI tip line, reporting the location of a fugitive wanted in connection with financial fraud and homicide. The second was to the local police, reporting suspicious activity at the Sleepy Inn Motel, possible pill dealing, weapons, the kind of thing that would guarantee a quick response. The third was to Channel 7 News, tipping them off about the imminent arrest of a major financial criminal. The fourth was to Colin's room. "Hello, Colin. Adam, where are you? Close enough to watch you panic. How does it feel to be hunted, Colin? To know that everyone's looking for you, that you can't trust anyone? What do you want?" "I want you to understand what you put Robert Chen through in his final days. The fear, the paranoia, the knowledge that someone was coming for you. I never meant for Chen to die. That wasn't supposed to happen. But it did happen, because you're a coward who was more concerned about protecting your stolen money than protecting an innocent man's life." Through the motel room window, I could see Colin pacing back and forth, the phone pressed to his ear. "Adam, listen to me. We can work this out. I've got money hidden away, accounts that the police don't know about. I can pay you." "I don't want your money, Colin. I want justice." "What kind of justice?" The kind that ensures you never hurt anyone again. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. Colin heard them, too. What did you do? I gave you what you gave Robert Chen, a choice. You can try to run knowing that you'll be caught eventually and spend the rest of your life in prison, or you can do the right thing for once in your miserable life. What right thing? Confess. Tell the police everything. Give them the names of your associates, the locations of the stolen money, the details of how you eliminated Robert Chen. Make it right. The sirens were getting closer. Colin was at the window now, looking out at the parking lot. They're here, he whispered. Yes, they are. So, what's it going to be, Colin? Are you going to face this like a man, or are you going to keep running like the coward you've always been? The line went dead. Through my binoculars, I watched as police cars surrounded the motel. FBI agents in tactical gear positioned themselves around Colin's room. A news van pulled into the parking lot, and I recognized Janet Morrison getting out with a camera crew. The arrest was swift and professional. Colin didn't resist when they broke down his door. He was sitting on the bed, hands already raised in surrender. They let him out in handcuffs as the news cameras rolled, and I felt a deep sense of satisfaction watching his perp walk. As the police cars drove away, my phone rang. It was Detective Chavez. Interesting coincidence, she said. Colin Price getting arrested just hours after someone called in multiple tips about his location. I wouldn't know anything about that. Of course not, but hypothetically, if someone had been tracking Price's location, they might be interested to know that he's already confessing to everything. Robert Chen's homicide, the financial fraud, the names of his associates, he's giving us everything. Hypothetically, that someone would probably be very pleased to hear that. Adam, this is over now. Colin's going to prison for the rest of his life. Nicole's cooperating with the investigation, and the stolen money is being returned to the sufferers. You got what you wanted, did I? Didn't you? I thought about Robert Chen, about Mrs. Chen's tears when she learned her husband had been homicided. I thought about all the other sufferers whose life savings had been stolen by Colin and Nicole's greed. I thought about the threats, the intimidation, the attempt to frame me for domestic misuse. Yeah, I said finally, I think I did. 3 months later, I was sitting in a courthouse, watching Nicole's sentencing hearing. She'd pled guilty to conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to homicide in exchange for her cooperation against Colin. The prosecutor was recommending 8 years in federal prison. Nicole looked different than she had during our marriage. Gone was the perfectly styled hair, the designer clothes, the confident smile. She wore a simple gray dress and no makeup. Her hair pulled back in a plain ponytail. She looked like what she'd always been underneath the facade, a small, petty criminal who'd gotten in over her head. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Nicole stood and turned toward the gallery. Her eyes found mine, and for a moment I saw a flash of the old Nicole, the manipulative, calculating woman who'd tried to destroy my life. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady, I want to apologize to everyone I've hurt. To my husband, Adam, who I betrayed in the worst possible way. To the families of our sufferers who trusted us with their life savings. To Robert Chen's widow, who lost her husband because of my cowardice. She paused, still looking directly at me. I know that nothing I say can undo the damage I've caused. I know that I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want everyone to know that I take full responsibility for my actions. Colin Price didn't force me to participate in this scheme. I chose to do it because I was greedy and selfish, and I thought I was smarter than everyone else. The judge sentenced her to 10 years in federal prison, 2 more than the prosecutor had recommended. As they led her away in shackles, Nicole looked back at me one more time. This time, there was no manipulation in her eye, no calculation. Just resignation and maybe possibly genuine remorse. I felt nothing. Colin's trial was scheduled for the following month, but he'd already pled guilty to all charges in exchange for life in prison without the possibility of parole. The prosecution had decided not to seek the death penalty in Robert Chen's homicide, partly because of Colin's cooperation in identifying his criminal associates. Those associates, including the 2 men who'd threatened me, had been arrested in a series of coordinated raids across 3 states. The FBI had dismantled an entire network of financial criminals, recovering millions of dollars in stolen assets. Mrs. Chen had gotten her husband's money back, plus interest. She'd used part of it to establish a foundation that helped elderly sufferers of financial fraud. She'd asked me to serve on the board of directors, and I'd accepted. Sam Rodriguez had started his own cybersecurity consulting firm, specializing in financial fraud investigation. He'd offered me a partnership, and I was seriously considering it. Detective Chavez had been promoted to sergeant, partly based on her work on the Chen homicide case. She'd become something of a local celebrity after the story broke nationally. And me, I was rebuilding my life, one day at a time. I'd bought a new house on the other side of town, far from the memories of my marriage to Nicole. It was smaller than our old place, but it was mine alone. No shared mortgages, no joint bank accounts, no secrets hidden in jewelry boxes. I'd also started dating again, something I never thought I'd be ready for. Her name was Lisa. She was a librarian at the local college, and she had no idea who I was when we first met. That anonymity was refreshing after months of being the guy whose wife tried to frame him for domestic misuse. But despite all the positive changes in my life, I still felt unfinished business with Colin Price. The opportunity to address that business came sooner than I expected. Colin's lawyer called me 2 weeks before the trial was scheduled to begin. "Mr. Mallory, my client would like to meet with you." "Why?" "He says he has something to tell you, something that wasn't included in his confession to the police." "What kind of something?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss the details over the phone, but Mr. Price seems to believe you'd want to hear what he has to say." I was curious despite myself. "Where would this meeting take place?" "The county jail. You'd be separated by reinforced glass, and the conversation would be monitored by guards. Completely safe." "I'll think about it." "Mr. Mallory, my client specifically asked me to tell you that this concerns your wife's original plan for you, the night she had you handcuffed." That got my attention. "What about it?" "Apparently there was more to that plan than anyone realized, including the police." I agreed to the meeting. 3 days later, I was sitting in the visiting room of the county jail, looking at Colin Price through a thick sheet of bulletproof glass. He'd aged years in the months since his arrest. His hair had gone completely gray, and he'd lost so much weight that his orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame. "Hello, Adam." "Colin, your lawyer said you had something to tell me." "I do. Something that's been eating at me since I was arrested." He leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper, even though I knew the conversation was being recorded. "The night Nicole had you handcuffed, that wasn't supposed to be the end of it." "What do you mean?" "The plan was more elaborate than just getting you to confess on camera. After you signed the confession, Mickey Torres was supposed to eliminate you." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Eliminate me? Make it look like a self-destruction. Nicole would tell the police that you'd become despondent after confessing to abusing her, that you'd taken your own life out of guilt and shame. "Why are you telling me this now?" Colin was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his hands. "Because I need you to know that I never wanted you dead, Adam. The homicide was Nicole's idea. She convinced me it was the only way to make sure you could never expose our operation." "You're lying." "I'm not. Nicole hated you, Adam. Really hated you. She said you'd made her feel stupid and small for years, that you looked down on her because she wasn't as educated as you. Eliminating you wasn't just about protecting our scheme, it was personal revenge." I stared at Colin through the glass, trying to process what he was telling me. "She was going to inherit everything after you died," he continued. "Your life insurance, your retirement accounts, the house. We figured it would be enough to disappear permanently, start new lives somewhere far away. But I activated the security system. The police came." "Right, and when that happened, Nicole panicked. She tried to salvage the situation by framing you for domestic misuse, but the original plan was much worse." "Why should I believe you?" Colin reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it up to the glass so I could see it. "This is a copy of the self-destruction note Nicole wrote for you. She was going to plant it on your computer after Mickey eliminated you." I could see my name at the top of the page, written in what looked like my handwriting. The note confessed to years of abusing Nicole, expressed remorse for my actions, and stated that I couldn't live with the guilt anymore. "Nicole practiced copying your handwriting for weeks," Colin said. "She had samples from birthday cards, grocery lists, everything. She was going to make sure the note looked authentic." "You kept this. Why?" "Insurance. I figured if Nicole ever tried to double-cross me, I'd need proof of what she was really capable of." I studied Colin's face, looking for signs of deception, but he seemed genuinely remorseful, almost relieved to be confessing this final secret. "There's something else," he said. The men who came to threaten you. Nicole hired them, not me. She told them you were dangerous, that you might try to hurt her. She wanted them to scare you into backing down. She hired them after you were already on the run. Yes, even after I was gone, she was still trying to control the situation, still trying to protect herself. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed by the implications of what Colin was telling me. Nicole hadn't just betrayed me. She'd planned to homicide me. And even after her scheme fell apart, she'd continued trying to manipulate and threaten me. Why are you telling me this now? I asked again. Because I'm going to die in prison and I don't want to take this secret with me. You deserve to know the truth about what your wife was planning. Is there anything else? Any other secrets you're keeping? Colin shook his head. That's everything. I've told the FBI about all of our criminal activities. I've confessed to Robert Chen's homicide, and now I've told you about Nicole's plan to eliminate you. I've got nothing left to hide. As I left the jail, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at Nicole for planning my homicide, gratitude to Colin for finally telling me the truth, and something else. A sense of closure that I hadn't expected. Nicole hadn't just been unfaithful. She hadn't just been greedy or selfish or manipulative. She'd been willing to homicide me to get what she wanted. The woman I'd been married to for 12 years, the woman I'd loved and trusted, had literally planned to end my life. But she'd failed. Her scheme had collapsed, her criminal enterprise had been exposed, and she was now serving 10 years in federal prison. Colin was facing life without parole. Robert Chen's butcher had been brought to justice, and his widow had gotten her money back. I'd won, completely and totally. That evening, I called Detective Chavez and told her about my conversation with Colin. She listened without interrupting, then asked if I wanted to press additional charges against Nicole. What would be the point? I said. She's already in prison, and Colin's testimony about the homicide plot would just be his word against hers. It wouldn't change her sentence. You're probably right, but Adam, I want you to know that I'm sorry. Sorry that we didn't realize how dangerous Nicole really was. Sorry that you had to go through all of this. Don't be sorry. If none of this had happened, Nicole and Colin would still be stealing from innocent people. Robert Chen would still be unavenged. Sometimes bad things have to happen to prevent worse things. That's a very philosophical way of looking at it. It's the only way I can look at it without going crazy. After I hung up, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset and thinking about the future. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely optimistic about what lay ahead. Nicole was in prison, where she belonged. Colin was facing life without parole, where he belonged. Their criminal associates had been arrested and prosecuted. The stolen money had been returned to its rightful owners. Justice had been served, not just through the legal system, but through my own actions. I'd refused to be a sufferer. I'd fought back against people who thought they could destroy me, and I'd won. My phone buzzed with a text message from Lisa. Dinner tomorrow night, I found a new restaurant I want to try. I smiled and typed back, absolutely, looking forward to it. As I hit send, I realized that I genuinely was looking forward to it. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with revenge or justice or settling scores. I was looking forward to living my life. 3 months later, I was standing in a courtroom watching Colin Price receive his life sentence. The judge's words were formal and final. Mr. Price, you have been found guilty of conspiracy, fraud, and first-degree homicide. You are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Colin showed no emotion as the sentence was pronounced. He'd already accepted his fate months ago when he decided to confess everything. As the bailiffs led him away, Colin looked back at me one final time. He nodded slightly, not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement that justice had been done. Mrs. Chen was sitting in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness this time, but tears of relief. Her husband's butcher was finally being held accountable for his crimes. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine. Lisa was waiting for me on the steps, along with Sam Rodriguez and Detective Chavez. So, Sam said, it's finally over. Yes, I replied, it's finally over. What are you going to do now? Chavez asked. I looked around at the people who'd helped me through the darkest period of my life, friends who'd stood by me when everyone else believed Nicole's lies, professionals who'd gone above and beyond to ensure justice was served. I'm going to live, I said, Really live for the first time in years. Lisa took my hand and squeezed it gently. "Come on," she said. "Let's get out of here." As we walked away from the courthouse, I felt the weight of the past year finally lifting from my shoulders. Nicole's betrayal, Colin's crimes, the threats and intimidation, it was all behind me now. I'd been tested in ways I never imagined possible, and I'd emerged stronger than before. I'd learned that I was capable of fighting back against people who tried to destroy me. I'd learned that justice sometimes requires more than just faith in the system. Sometimes it requires taking action yourself. Most importantly, I'd learned that even when everything falls apart, it's possible to rebuild, to start over, to find happiness again. Nicole had tried to handcuff me to a life of lies and manipulation. Instead, she'd freed me to discover who I really was and what I was truly capable of. For that, ironically, I was almost grateful. The sun was setting as we reached the parking lot, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. But tonight, for the first time in over a year, I was simply going to enjoy dinner with the woman I loved, surrounded by friends who cared about me. It was more than enough. It was everything.